This is painful for me to say. LeBron James does not care about our fantasy teams. So if you're still holding out hope for Blake Griffin, I would probably cut him loose.
On this video, we'll help you get ready for your NBA fantasy playoffs. I'm Alan Seslowsky here with RotoWire NBA editor Nick Whalen. Nick, it's time to shed our depth. Our season-long fantasy NBA playoff leagues are about to start. Who are a few players we can proactively add in anticipation of them getting some starts in the next few weeks?
You can start to take a glance at the NBA standings in each conference and kind of pinpoint the teams that are falling out of the playoff race. And with the addition of the play-in tournament this season, it's a little bit of a deeper field. There's not too many teams that, at this point in the season have already shifted their focus to the draft and to the future. But if you look at the Western Conference, a team like the Oklahoma City Thunder, the Houston Rockets, who at one point lost 20 games in a row. The Minnesota Timberwolves are still in last place. Those are the teams you want to target to start to look at younger players, guys who maybe haven't seen as many minutes over the first half of the season, who might get some extended looks over these last 20 or 25 games. So, focusing on the Thunder, a player like Kenrich Williams, Theo Maledon, the rookie point guard, has been getting a ton of run with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander injured. The Thunder have already shut down Al Horford a couple of weeks ago. That was an expected move. That's opened the door for guys like Moses Brown, Isaiah Roby, another young player. So teams like Oklahoma City, like Houston, like Minnesota, as we get further and further toward the conclusion of the season, it wouldn't be a surprise if basically any players, who are around 30 years or older start to see more and more frequent rest days.
Which top players that carried you this far are you more worried about? I
would kind of say the opposite of the question we just talked about, Alan. I think you almost have to look at the top of the standings and some of those teams that are really secure in their positioning. And in a season when most arenas have, 25% or fewer fans in them right now, and it's not looking like that's going to change in the immediate future, there maybe isn't going to be that much jostling for, a 1 or a 2 seed. You want those top seeds, but it's not as big of an advantage as it's been in years past. So teams that are securely in the playoffs, those are the teams that you worry about maybe assigning more rest days down the stretch. Teams like Utah, which leads the Western Conference, Philadelphia, Brooklyn, those teams are at the top of the East. Milwaukee is in that category as well. Guys like Rudy Gobert, guys like Donovan Mitchell, Mike Conley is already sitting out one half of back-to-backs. It wouldn't be a surprise if players like that get even more rest down the stretch. Chris Paul, a veteran player, is another one. He's been remarkably healthy over these last 2 years in OKC and in Phoenix. And I don't think the Suns want to jeopardize that going into the playoffs right now as the number 2 seed with a pretty nice cushion between them and the Clippers at number 3 in the Western Conference. And LA is another team. Kawhi Leonard's been very healthy this season. He hasn't rested as much as we thought he would. It wouldn't be a surprise, again, if they kind of make up for that down the stretch and make sure that players like Kawhi Leonard and Paul George are at full strength heading into the playoffs.
What players that are sitting on the bottom of our rosters that we've held on to all year can we safely drop for the playoffs?
You have to consider someone like LeBron James, who we really do not know when he's going to be back and what he's going to look like when he comes back. Obviously, the Lakers are a team that are squarely focused not only on the NBA playoffs, but on getting to the NBA Finals. This is painful for me to say. LeBron James does not care about our fantasy teams. He's not going to rush back to make sure that he's in your lineup for week 2 of the NBA playoffs. So he's certainly somebody to consider. You look at a player like Blake Griffin, somebody who was held on to, I think, in a lot of leagues in hopes that he would land somewhere and find a bigger role. He's had a nice, 20, 25-minute roll off the bench for Brooklyn. But for me, I've seen enough of a sample already that to me tells me he's not going to be a valuable contributor in fantasy leagues down the stretch. So if you're still holding out hope for Blake Griffin, I would probably cut him loose at this point as well.
Try RotoWire's premium tools, rankings, up-to-the-minute breaking news and analysis free for 10 days. No credit card required. Go to RotoWire.com/YouTube.